My family voted to demolish the warehouse I inherited because they thought I failed. Then the inspector opened the door. Hi, I'm Daniel Reeves, I'm 34, and my family tried to demolish my business on a Monday morning because they thought I was a failure. The announcement came like a death sentence delivered with a laser pointer. Demolition crew arrives Monday, my Uncle Frank said, tapping the blueprint spread across the conference table like he was planning a military strike. That warehouse in the corner. Rusted panels. No foot traffic. Looks abandoned. Clients hate seeing it. We need the space for parking. Everyone nodded. My cousins didn't even look at me. They were already picturing fresh asphalt and painted lines where my inheritance stood. I smiled. That should have been their first warning. The building they were voting to erase wasn't just some forgotten storage unit. It was the last thing my grandmother ever gave me. A squat, ugly warehouse she'd left only to me, separate from the family trust, 3 years earlier. And yes, from the outside it looked dead. Rusted siding. Faded warning signs. No logo. No windows anyone could peer into. Exactly as designed. You've had 3 years. Uncle Frank continued, voice coated in fake patience. Nothing's happening there, Daniel. Time to be realistic. Realistic. That word always came up when they talked to me. While my cousins became lawyers, brokers, and insurance salesmen, I played with computers. That's what they called my computer science degree. What they called the nights I disappeared, the calls I stopped returning, the holidays I skipped because I was working on something. My mother used to tell people I was between opportunities. So I let them talk. Let them vote. Let them schedule my demolition. Because I knew something they didn't. 2 hours later, a city inspector showed up for pre-demolition clearance. Clipboard. Hard hat. Bored expression. He walked toward the warehouse while Uncle Frank explained how it was and used. The inspector unlocked the door. And everything stopped. Cold air rushed out. Not dust. Not decay. A low, constant hum. He froze. Then he turned around slowly, his face draining of color, as his phone came up to his ear. Yeah, he said quietly, staring back into the building. Stop everything. Right now. Uncle Frank laughed nervously. Problem? The inspector didn't answer him. Instead, he said, loud enough for all of us to hear. This isn't storage. This is a live data facility. And just like that, the smile finally reached my eyes. The inspector stepped fully inside, and the door swung wider than my family expected. Rows of server racks stretched into the darkness like steel soldiers. Blue LEDs blinked in steady rhythms. Thick cables ran overhead in organized bundles. The temperature dropped instantly, that clean, refrigerated chill that only serious infrastructure produces. Uncle Frank actually took a step back. What is all this? Cousin Elliot asked, his confident businessman voice cracking like a teenager's. The inspector rubbed his chin, eyes scanning labels, security cameras, biometric locks. Climate-controlled. Redundant power. Tiered access zones. He turned and looked straight at me. You operating this alone? Yes, I said. Frank cleared his throat. This is part of our family complex. That building is privately owned. The inspector interrupted, already flipping pages on his clipboard. And currently hosting protected commercial data. He pointed at one rack. Then another. Enterprise-grade hardware. Real-time monitoring. Multiple uplinks. Whoever runs this knows exactly what they're doing. Silence fell like a dropped plate. I could practically hear old conversations replaying in their heads. When are you going to get a real job? Still doing that tech stuff? Must be nice to have hobbies. Frank tried to recover. Daniel never told us he was doing this. The inspector raised an eyebrow. Did you ask? That one landed hard. He made another call. This one longer. More serious. Phrases floated back to us like smoke. Active contracts. Significant liability. No, demolition was scheduled. Yes, without owner consent. When he hung up, his tone changed completely. Nobody touches this structure. Not a nail. Not a brick. He looked at Frank like he was a man standing too close to a cliff. If that crew had shown up today, you'd be looking at lawsuits that would bury this entire complex. Frank's face went pale. Not angry pale. Fear pale. How much is in here? Elliot whispered. The inspector glanced at a mounted dashboard screen. Based on what I'm seeing? He paused. Millions. I finally spoke again. The contracts alone are just over $2. 3 million a year. Every head snapped toward me. I shrugged. That's revenue, not profit. But still. My uncle opened his mouth. Closed it. Tried again. You've been running this under our noses? No, I said calmly. I've been running it on my property. Under my grandmother's name. Exactly how she intended. That was the moment they realized something worse than losing a parking lot. They'd been wrong about me. And they had put it in writing. The emergency family meeting that followed didn't feel like a discussion. It felt like an interrogation where the suspects slowly realized they were the criminals. Uncle Frank slammed his hand on the table. You've been operating a commercial business inside the family complex without telling anyone. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. I've been operating a business on my property, I said. The one Grandma left to me. Separately. Legally. Cousin Elliot flipped through the copied documents like they might burst into flames. These numbers can't be right. They're conservative, I replied. I don't count burst capacity or on-demand scaling. They stared at me like I'd started speaking another language. Frank scoffed. Why would you hide this? You let us think the building was abandoned. I leaned back. You didn't think. You assumed. That's dumb. I could see it land. For years, I continued. Every time I tried to explain what I was working on, you waved it off. Tech nonsense. Computer hobbies. Not real work. My mother looked down at the table. So I stopped explaining. And I built something that didn't need your approval. Frank's jaw tightened. You made us look foolish. No, I said evenly. You did that yourselves when you scheduled demolition without checking ownership. That was the turning point. The lawyer they'd rushed and cleared her throat. I need to be very clear. You authorized demolition of a structure you do not own, containing equipment protected under commercial and privacy regulations. Frank swallowed. If any physical damage had occurred, she continued, the liability would be catastrophic. How catastrophic? Someone asked. She didn't hesitate. Potentially business ending. Silence. I slid a folder across the table. Deed. Business license. Insurance. Active contracts. They passed it around like it was radioactive. $2, 3 million annually. Elliot whispered again. I nodded. From a building you called an eyesore. That's when Frank's tone shifted. Softer. Careful. Well, clearly there's been a misunderstanding. We're family. We should have communicated better. I smiled. Not the polite one. You voted to erase my livelihood without speaking to me, I said. That's not miscommunication. That's dismissal. The room felt smaller. Tighter. And that's when the lawyer spoke again. There's something else. Everyone looked up. The land survey shows the access road you've been using for decades? She tapped the map. It's not part of the family trust. She turned to me. It belongs to Daniel. You could hear a pin drop. Because suddenly it wasn't just my building they didn't own. It was the ground under their feet. Frank laughed. A sharp, brittle sound. That can't be right. We've used that road for 30 years. Use doesn't equal ownership, the attorney replied, especially when permission was granted in writing. She slid another document forward. Signed. Dated. By my grandmother. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. Grandma had done the talking decades earlier. So you're saying, Elliot said slowly, the driveway we use for client access, the one that feeds half the parking lot, crosses Daniel's parcel. The attorney finished. Without an easement. Frank rubbed his temples. This is getting ridiculous. It was ridiculous, I said, when you scheduled demolition without verifying who owned the building. That shut him up. The next week was chaos. Emails. Calls. Lawyers whispering in hallways. Suddenly everyone wanted to clarify boundaries and maintain family harmony. I hired my own attorney. She was calm. Sharp. The kind of woman who smiled when people underestimated her. If they damaged a single server, she told me, you'd be dealing with federal regulators right now. Ignorance isn't a defense. Should I sue? I asked. She studied me. Do you want revenge or leverage? I thought about it. I want acknowledgement. That came faster than expected. Frank called a reconciliation meeting. Same room. Same table. Different energy. We made a mistake, he said, hands folded like he was praying. We should have trusted you. No, I corrected. You should have respected me, he sighed. What do you want, Daniel? I'd rehearsed this. A formal easement agreement. Market rates. Written apology. And confirmation that my property and business are fully independent from the trust. That seems adversarial. You tried to bulldoze my future, I replied. This is documentation. They didn't argue. The easement alone brought in $180,000 a year. Not life-changing, but symbolic. Rent for land they treated as invisible. Then my attorney called. There's one more thing, she said. Your grandmother left a letter. Instructions were to release it only if the family interfered with the warehouse. My chest tightened. I opened it that night. And everything suddenly made sense. Because she'd known. She'd known exactly what they'd do. And she'd planned for it. I read the letter alone in my office, surrounded by the hum of servers my family never believed existed. It was handwritten. Grandma's old blue ink. Careful, deliberate. Daniel. If you're reading this, then my children have proven me right. I laughed once. A short, disbelieving sound. She wrote about how I listened more than I spoke. How I built quietly. How the family mistook noise for success and confidence for competence. They will underestimate you because they don't understand what you build, she wrote. And because admitting your success would force them to question their own. My throat tightened. She explained why the warehouse was deeded separately. Why the land survey was so precise. Why the access road permission was documented. This is not mistrust, she wrote. It is preparation. By the time I finished, my hands were shaking. The next family meeting was the shortest we'd ever had. I placed the letter on the table. She left this for you, I said. In case you tried to interfere. They read it in silence. Frank didn't look angry this time. He looked tired. Smaller. She never said any of this. My mother whispered. She didn't have to, I replied. She showed it. The apology came. Awkward. Incomplete. But it came. What didn't come back was my trust. The data center grew anyway. Word travels fast in tech. Especially stories where competence beats arrogance. Within 6 months, contracts climbed past $3 million. I started planning a second facility, off-site, far from family politics. The funny thing? They started inviting me to meetings again. Asking my opinion. Wanting advice. The same people who once asked when I'd get a real job. I declined most invitations. Because respect that arrives late doesn't feel like respect. It feels like recalculation. And I'd already learned the difference. 2 years later, the warehouse they once called an eyesore had become the most valuable structure on the block. Still ugly on the outside. Still intentionally forgettable. Inside? A machine that never slept. We expanded twice. Added redundancy. New cooling systems. Private cages for higher-tier clients. I hired engineers who'd left shiny corporate campuses because they preferred competence over buzzwords. Revenue passed $7.8 million annually. That's when Uncle Frank's business started slipping. The insurance world changed faster than he did. Automation. Consolidation. Younger competitors who understood data instead of golf lunches. He called me one evening. "I'm in a tight spot," he said. "Just need a short-term loan. Bridge capital." I almost admired the confidence. "What collateral?" I asked. A pause. "Daniel, we're family." I smiled, though he couldn't see it. "Family scheduled demolition of my building without asking," I said. Family assumed I was worthless. Family doesn't mean unsecured loans. Silence again. "I thought you'd understand," he said quietly. "I do," I replied. "That's why the answer is no." His agency closed 8 months later. No celebration. No revenge. Just consequences. Meanwhile, I bought land in the neighboring city. Built a second facility from scratch. This one clean, modern, visible. Clients came faster than I could onboard them. Funny thing about being underestimated, when the truth finally surfaces, it travels fast. At a local business event, someone asked me how I'd pulled it off. I told them the truth. I built quietly. And I let people underestimate me until it was too late for them to interfere. The warehouse still stands. Still ugly. Still humming. And every time I walk past it, I hear my grandmother's voice reminding me. Some things only look empty to people who don't know how to see. The family dynamic eventually settled into something cold, but functional. Not forgiveness. Not closeness. Boundaries. Cousin Elliot's accounting firm started handling part of my books. He was good at what he did, and unlike the others, he never pretended the past hadn't happened. We didn't joke about it. We didn't apologize again. We just worked. That was enough. My mother stopped asking when I'd slow down. She started asking how my employees were doing. Progress, I guess. The real shift came the day the city approved my third facility. $12. $6 million in annual revenue. 39 employees. Clients across 3 states. A reporter from a regional business journal called it the quietest tech expansion nobody saw coming. I framed that article and hung it in my office, not for pride, but for memory. Because I remembered sitting at that conference table while they voted to erase me. I remembered the laser pointer. The word eyesore. At the next family gathering, Frank didn't talk business. He didn't ask for favors. He just nodded at me from across the room. It wasn't warmth. But it wasn't dismissal either. And strangely, that was enough closure. The warehouse never got renovated. People kept asking why. I told them the truth. Because the outside taught me something important, I said. It showed me exactly who judges value by appearances. The building still hums at night. Still invisible to anyone not looking for it. Just like I used to be. And just like then, that's exactly how I prefer it. The funny thing is, if my family had never scheduled that demolition, they might still think I failed. The warehouse would still be empty, in their minds. I'd still be the quiet one who didn't quite measure up. And honestly, I probably would have let them keep thinking that. Because success didn't change me. It clarified me. 5 years after the near demolition, the business crossed $21 million in annual revenue. 3 facilities. 52 employees. Clients who trusted us with systems they couldn't afford to lose for even a second. The original warehouse is still the heart of it all. Same rusted panels. Same faded warning sign. Same unremarkable corner of the block. Inside, everything runs perfectly. I never did repaint it. Never added signage. Never made it look respectable. That building taught me the most important lesson of my life. People who only see value when it's loud, shiny, and obvious are never your audience. Grandma's photo still hangs in my office. Not the formal one. The candid one. Her laughing mid-sentence, eyes sharp and knowing. Sometimes, late at night, when the servers hum and the lights blink in steady rhythm, I think about how close they came to erasing everything. And how they never could have. They tried to demolish my future for parking spaces. They called my life's work an eyesore. They assumed silence meant failure. Instead, silence gave me room to build. The demolition crew never came. The parking lot was never built. And the building they wanted gone became the foundation of everything. Some structures are meant to stand quietly. Some people too.